In this video, I really want to talk about finesse flipping and pitching. This is a technique that I really start to do a lot kind of in this late summer, early fall time frame that we are in right now. Yesterday, I talked about kind of attacking shallow water, and this is probably the number one technique, the number one thing that I have rigged up with me that I always fish because it can catch you a lot of fish and it can catch you some really big fish. Now in this video, we're gonna go kind of in depth and more into detail about it. But before we do, this video is brought to you by my apparel company, Finn Fishing. Right now for the month of August 2024, if you buy a USA made sun shirt, one of the only USA made sun shirts on the market, you get a free American Bass t-shirt. This is a tri-blend t-shirt. It's extremely comfortable. It's worth $20, but right now it is free with the purchase of a sun shirt. So all you gotta do, add the size and color of sun shirt to cart that you want, add the size of the American Bass t-shirt to cart. It will automatically discount at checkout. I will leave links down below in the description and in the comments. Shopping at Finn Fishing is truly the best way to help support this channel. I greatly appreciate all of you who have done so. All right, let's talk about this finesse technique to flipping and pitching. This is actually the little bad boy that I want to talk about here in just a minute. But before we do, I really want to tell you kind of how I kind of came about this, because I'd love to take credit for these things, but I always like to give credit where credit is due. Now, the first time I kind of heard more or less about finesse flipping and pitching was actually by Ish Monroe. And if you guys follow professional bass fishing, you know, Ish Monroe is known as a flipper and a frogger. And I remember him doing kind of this video a long time ago where he talked about, you know, finesse flipping and what that actually means. Now, with that being said, my favorite thing to say, I didn't apply this a lot on the water until I got beat by it really bad one day. About 5 or 6 years ago, I was out there and I had gotten on a good bite, you know, flipping and pitching down in Tennessee in a Bassmaster Open. And then the first day of that tournament, I went to kind of my area where I was gonna be flipping and pitching a lot of wood and willow trees. And lo and behold, I got whooped by a co-angler in the back of my boat. Now, I was still catching some fish and I was flipping kind of my typical presentation, which is either a 3/8 or a 1/2 ounce weight with kind of a 4.25 inch beaver style bait. That is what I had caught some fish on in practice. It's what I have a lot of confidence in. But here we were at kind of that later summer time frame. The lakes have seen a lot of pressure. And the guy that was with me that day, he was actually from up here in Ohio. He was an Ohio River rat. And he had brought on the boat just this little guy right here. This little tiny crawl. This is a speed crawl for a lot of you. You probably know this. This is one of my favorite lures of all time. My favorite soft plastics I've used a lot. But he was flipping and pitching this behind me on a 1/4 ounce weight. I mean, just like you have it right here. And the thing was, I was still catching fish, but he was catching, it seemed like a few more fish. Like he seemed to be getting a few more bites than I was. And the thing was that every time he pulled the trigger on a fish, it was a big one. Like he caught the biggest fish that day until finally I'm like, okay, I gotta make a change. And I made the change and then I started catching some more fish. And something that really made me realize how important it was there was 2 bites during this day. I will never forget this. I flipped into this like little bush and literally I felt a bass hit my bait and drop it. It was like, boom, I was about to set the hook and I felt it just open up. And I'm like, what in the world? And I flipped back there 2, 3 more times, nothing. As I moved past it, my co-angler flipped his exact same bait that I was just talking about right there into that same little spot and caught like a 2.5 pounder. And I was like, I wasn't mad by any means. I was just like, huh, that's really something. And then probably about an hour after that, almost the exact same thing happened. I flipped into this little area and a fish, I could literally almost feel this fish like mouthing my bait. I don't think he ever actually hit it or swallowed it, but I could feel him just hitting like the tails. It was one of the more weirdest feelings that I've ever had. I set the hook anyways and nothing. And same thing, I flipped back there 3, 4 times, nothing. I just got past it, co-angler. I was kind of watching him. He flipped right in there, and caught that fish. And guess what? It was a 4-pounder, which during the time that I was fishing in this open, that was like a really big fish. And right then and there, you think I'd like learn, but it took me some time to really put down my flipping bait and pick up what he was throwing. But it made a humongous difference as soon as I started doing it. And the thing is I kind of thought that maybe the fish just wanted the crawl style bait, you know, like, cause I was using a beaver, he was using a crawl style bait. So I switched over to that crawl style bait. It was a bigger crawl. It was a Berkeley chigger crawl. And so it was a little bit bigger, a little bit more aggressive flap, but I was still fishing it on that 3/8 ounce weight. And guess what? I did not have any bites doing that, or at least I had a couple, but same kind of thing. It didn't seem like the fish were wanting it. Finally, after he had caught a limit and was calling behind me before I even had my limit, I'm like, all right, I got to make the switch. So I had the same baits, I made the change, and I was able to get my limit. I actually ended up getting a check in that tournament. Out of like 200 guys, I placed 30th, 34th, I think, in that tournament. And it was all because of my co-angler, because of what he showed me and what I experienced. And that was finesse flipping. Now, since then, this is still one of the baits that I pick up. There's 2 baits that I pick up a lot whenever I'm doing finesse flipping. And one is this one. It's a Zoom speed crawl. You know, it's a very well known, but I like to fish it on a 1/4 ounce weight. And I think that this is part of the attraction of this particular rig. The 1/4 ounce weight, it really makes that bait drop slowly in the water. And when you are fishing around really highly pressured bass, I think that slow fall can be a really big deal for those fish at times. It can really help them to just kind of hone in on it. And also when it's down there on the bottom, because it's such a light weight, it just has a lot more natural movement to it. So you will find a lot of times that, you know, a lot of times when you flip and pitch, a bass is gonna bite it on the initial fall. I have found a lot with finesse flipping that you will have a lot of fish bite it 2 or 3 pumps in a piece of cover. Well, I flip it in there, I'm kind of yo-yoing it or popping it a couple times, and then he gets it. And I think that part of that is because those fish are very, you know, they're very pressured, they're very shy, and they don't always hit that bait on the initial fall, but because it looks so natural, that is what makes those fish go up there and grab it. And I just used this, I cut it off my rod. I used this a week ago and had a ball fishing it. That video will come out on BassFishingHQ in a week or 2. But anyways, the other bait that I like to throw besides this little Zoom speed crawl is a straight-tailed worm. Something like a Zoom trick worm, or what I like to throw a lot of times are the fat robo worms, like a 6.5 inch fat robo worm. And the biggest reason is that, I fish it on the same thing, a 1/4 ounce weight, and usually like a 3/0 trocar flipping hook. That's what I kind of like for this whole setup. And that thing gets a ton of bites. And I think that one of the biggest reasons is that it's almost like fishing a shaky head, where you can shaky head, obviously, as we know, gets a lot of bites, and flipping it and pitching it just allows you to fish a bait in a little bit heavier cover and be very effective with it. It's like fishing a shaky head in really heavy cover. But the thing about this is that when I am finesse flipping and pitching, I still use heavy line. And recently, I've really started to use a lot more braid to fluorocarbon with this. And I will use a 30-pound braid to usually a 20-pound fluorocarbon leader. So it's still a very heavy line that I'm fishing. Like, you can pull big fish out of heavy cover with that, but the bait is very finessey. And I'm telling you what, this thing just gets a lot of bites. And I think that that's what's really, really important about this technique, is that in late summer, early fall, the fishing's tough. It is so important for your mind to just get some bites. I don't even care sometimes if they're bluegill. If I have bluegill down there picking up my crawls, you know, sometimes just getting a little thud, a little shotgun on the end of your rod can just keep you a little bit motivated out there. But I'm telling you what, I've also caught some real big fish over the years with this crawl and with that worm. So guys, it's really simple. I kind of use my typical flipping setup, but I'm using a lot more finesse presentation. Small weight, small bait, smaller hook. It gets a lot more bites. You could definitely do this during the springtime and catch fish. But the thing that I have found, because I've tried this in the spring, is that in the spring you have a lot of fish up shallow. You tend to just catch a lot of small fish. I'm not saying that you don't catch big fish, but you tend to just catch a lot of smaller fish. It seems like during the late summer and early fall, like we've been talking about, you will catch a lot of big fish on this bait. They are fish that are smarter. They've seen everything. Some of them have probably been caught, and they're just not willing to fall for what everyone else has been throwing. And so, guys, finesse flipping and pitching, it's a great little technique. Pick it up, go catch you some fish, and yeah. All right, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to check out Finn Fishing Gear, and I will see you guys tomorrow.